I grew up in the top end of the Northern Territory, and I lived on a number of different properties, such as Tipperary and Dorisvale, and my dad was a manager. This was in the early 1970s, and it was a very isolated life. I experienced some amazing sights growing up in the Territory. The vastness of the beauty, such as the rainbows after a big rainfall, and the amazing lightning shows. They were unbelievable. I grew up with 2 siblings, and the only other people we had to mix with were the Aboriginal people there. As there were not many children, we spent more time with the adults and elders. More often than not, if Mum couldn't find us, we would be down in the camp. We would spend time with them and they would look after us as if we were their own. We were very fortunate. We experienced a lot of their culture. We got to try a lot of the land's food. Things that you would not normally get to try, such as snake, witchetty grubs, goanna, turtle, bush fruit and vegetables. Because my brother was a boy, he was very lucky. He got to go out on day-long hunts up in areas where they didn't take the women. My sister and I would often feel left out. We had the greatest playground that any child could have, bushland itself. Us kids would just take ourselves off swimming and exploring the rivers and streams. One of our favourite things to do was look for the bowerbirds' nests. To us, snakes weren't an enemy. They were just part of the animal kingdom, and we weren't frightened. It makes me sad for kids of today. A lot of them would think we had nothing compared to them, but we had so much more. We only ever went to town twice a year, mid-year and just before or after Christmas, depending on how the wet went. We used to enjoy going to town, and I would save up my weekly pocket money of 10 cents, and I would be able to buy 2 famous 5 books. By the time I was 9, I had the whole collection. I then started collecting Trixie Belden. We didn't have TV, so we used to play a lot of board games and we learned how to cook. My favourite pastime was reading. It took me to another world. I think reading for all those years as a child has given me the ability to see things in my mind without having to see them on paper. It's helped me to become a big picture person. I don't need to see something in front of me. I can just imagine things and design them in my head. When we moved from the cattle properties to town, it took me many years to stop grieving for my life in the bush. My mother always said that out of her 3 children, I was the one who didn't adapt easily to moving into town. Growing up as a teenager, I did not grow up as a confident person. So when I turned 18, my mother suggested that I travel overseas and to live with my grandparents in England. It was an extremely good learning curve for me. I came back after 12 months overseas and I worked in a number of jobs. I got married when I was 30. Life for me began at 35. This was when I figured out who and what I was and where I wanted to be. In the last 10 years, I've had some interesting positions which have taught me a lot about life and people. Each day I get out of bed and live by the mantra, I have been given a precious gift, and that is life itself. So every day I like to make the most of my day, and I believe a big part of that is knowing who you are and accepting it. As a young teenager and woman, I spent many years looking at glossy magazines with beautiful people in them, and by the time I reached my mid-30s I figured I'm never going to be one of those people. I am who I am. I am happy with who I am, happy that I have every faculty available to me, and that's what matters to me. I don't need material things, and I don't need acceptance from my peers to feel this way. My greatest achievement to date is my 2 children, and every day I try and make them live some part of how I lived when I grew up. So they always spend time outdoors. They have animals, and we often go out camping or out for the day to boil the billy tea. I want them to try and experience the childhood that I had. By the time I turn 90, I would like to look back over my shoulder and look back at my life as having lived it the best that I could, and having made every effort to do right by all, including myself.